just heard from my brother.
Apparently, Mr. Shabunia does not know how to mute a microphone correctly. Well, that's good. That's actually quite amazing. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and that other weird voice that happened to not be here at the right time. My name is Soen. You'll know me simply by the fact that, hey, there's a horror game on right now. And when that happens, it means that this man is in control. Meanwhile, I believe Mr. Shabunia is tied up a little bit for the evening. Would you like something to say, Mr. Shabunia?
Help! I don't want to play a horror
No,
game!
no. That's no good. That's no good. Tonight he will be playing Fatal Frame. The first one, because the second one was just too much money to figure out. That being said, I believe we should start the game now? Possibly? One more time. Good. So you see, every time that things go a little bit awry, Mr. Shabunia will deal with, I guess you could say, positive physical reinforcement, wouldn't you say? That's exactly right. So, now I wish we had someone to be able to tell us exactly what difficulty he should be playing this on, but I don't even think there is a difficulty in one. Is there? Nope. There is not. Go ahead and go back and press start, sir, if you ever would. And anyone, Fury of Light, if you were to go out and find someone who might want to watch this, it might be beneficial to everyone involved. No, don't listen to him. Just listen to the soothing sounds of my voice. Please, Mr. Shabunia. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, while we play this game, while we do a little bit of scary stories along with the dark, wouldn't you say that's a good idea? Temco. Wait, no, Tecmo. No laughing, Mr. Shabunia. Not exactly right for where you are.
He was the only one I could open up to.
Now, I believe in the beginning of this game you're going to have to find a camera, because you don't have one yet.
After our mother died.
In which case, we will, you know, have a good, simple conversation. Let me see, we have a choice of 3 stories for you tonight. The first of which would be a story of my youth. The second, a story of a prowler. The third, a story of an angel. Which one would you like to hear first, Mr. One more second there, ladies and gentlemen. I believe he actually answered me in the positive that time.
A famous novelist.
As you were saying?
I said your childhood, you son of a...
Thank you very much, Mr. Shabunia. Ladies and gentlemen, long before I was this, I lived in a simple plane like you did, or you do, depending on exactly where. And when I was 3 years old, I lived at that time with my grandparents. I lived with my grandparents in a house not actually unlike Mr. Shabunia's. I'm sorry. Brings me back. Anyway, one night, I needed to move around to, as you normal humans do, void yourselves. And I started walking around my grandparents' house, needing to find somewhere to use the restroom, and in my journey found my way to the kitchen. Now you see, the kitchen and the bathroom were almost connected by just a short hallway. And also attached to that hallway was my playroom. Now granted, ladies and gentlemen, I was an only child. I did not need a playroom, but there was one. Simply because of the fact that long time prior, my father and his brother had lived in this house. And they needed one more room for one more child. That is important. Because out of that room came a slight sound of a movement, drag, pound, and a drag, and a pound, and a drag, a pound, drag, and a pound. And me, at my young age, was horrified by the entire idea of not being able to see what was exactly in front of me. A save point, Shabunia? No. You play this through. That being said, I wanted and needed to see what was ahead of me. But also, being a small child, I was horrified. Now, I was rather tall for a small child, and probably around 3 feet tall at 3 years old. I know, very odd, but I am quite large. So that being said, what came out of that room was much larger. A head, something almost horse-like. Oh, our first ghost situation. And yet more, Mr. Shabunia does not yet have his camera. When, through a horse-like head moved through the actual doorway and looked down at me with human face, with human skin, and small rivets, almost as though scales or horns covering the top of its head. It turned into this long neck and it looked at me. And when I say looked at me, dear viewers, it looked at me as though I was not there, and yet was. Its eyes glared through me very, very, very poignantly. And its irises, I will always remember its irises. The color of its eyes were always black, except for red, deep blood red, looking straight through me. And as I sat there, or stood there, just waited for my own incomparable end, I watched as this elongated neck made a left-hand turn around that doorway. And it stared at me. And I stared back at it and saw nothing but darkness. And its chest moved through the doorway, ladies and gentlemen, and I must tell you, it was pulling itself as though a gorilla with lame legs moving across a floor. Giant biceps and triceps and chest muscles pulling the rest of the body through, and it looked as though to be covered entirely. Ooh, Mr. Shabunia has found the journal. Oh, that wasn't good, was it? I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Shabunia appears to have dropped his controller. I'm going to have to deal with this momentarily. I don't think they heard you.
Did come.
Good. Good. Now, please apologize for your actions.
No, drop it! It fell on my hands!
Right. Just because you see ghosts in a story does not mean you should be scared. And I continue. You see, viewers, I believe this thing, this creature standing in front of me, to not be able... Ah, and we have come to the first moment. I'm sorry to keep interrupting myself, but I must say, watching him struggle against watching this, against watching these ghosts and shooting these ghosts is, I must say, quite hilarious. Now, I believed that it would not be able to move itself with its hind legs, for its hind legs were bent backwards and looked to be kind of pointless, honestly, until the moment when, moving forward, it launched itself upwards on its back hind legs and stared directly down at me. And it raised itself up, taller, doubling its own height and doubling mine. And its neck craned down. And when its neck craned down, ladies and gentlemen, its tail swooshed out of the room and landed on the floor. A loud, uttering thunk. And I believe that at that moment, I lost the need to use the restroom. If you didn't understand Mr. Shabunia, he said I should have saved under that fatigue. And you know what? Maybe he should have. Maybe I should have let him, but I wanted him to face this alone, without any help. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it looked down at me, and it stared into my eyes, and it looked and said,
Ghost, with this camera has the power to expose things
I wasn't
normal
looking
eye
for
can't
you,
see. I
but
remember
you're
the
good
incident
enough to...
from which I learned of its unique power to capture ghosts.
And at that moment, I began to move backwards. I began to move away from the doorways, and away from everything, until I felt something warm upon my back. The monster stared upwards, and I fainted. I am not sad to say I fainted. Into that warmth and that safety. And then when I woke up the next morning, nothing was different. You believe that, Mr. Shabunia? Nothing. I went downstairs. And I, being where I was, went downstairs and lived with my grandparents on the second floor, my aunts on the first, and they asked me, what was that bang last night? And I looked at them scared. But luckily, right behind me, to save myself, my grandfather decided to walk ahead and say to them, "Oh, it was nothing. I found the kids screaming in the middle of the hallway, you know, how he does when he gets his frights." And they all just nodded, and I quickly began to believe that it was just a dream. And then do you want to know what happened next? 10 years went by, and not one thing happened. I moved from my own town to my new one, where I would eventually grow old and suffer. But then again, time is fluid, isn't it, Mr. Shabunia? It is. See, though, when I moved into the Catholic Church, as some people often do, I was received a letter from my grandfather. Was received. That was very good English, was it not? Either way. My grandfather wrote me a note before he died, pretty much just a standard card saying, "Good job on reaching this pinnacle point in your life, or thank you for all the things you've done. This is the simple things that everyone seems to do now and again.
It's been 2 weeks since I last heard from
But the
my brother.
problem was at the bottom of that note, Mr. Shabunia. At the bottom of that note,
But he left a note.
it said,
that led me to
I am
this
sorry.
place.
I am so sorry.
I felt as though
But
something
what you
was
saw in that
following me.
hallway was real. And I have no idea of what to tell you. My grandmother pushed it away like it was nothing.
Matthew.
Just the madness of the coming death. But in that church basement, I knew. I knew that it was never going to be the same. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have enjoyed this so far, please subscribe to Shabunia Gaming. Please subscribe to the YouTube, to the Facebook. Follow it on the Tumblr. And if you want to see more of me,
Is this place?
leave a comment. Just for me. Mr. Shabunia. Who allowed you to have control of a keyboard? Bad man. Ladies and gentlemen, let's watch as he attempts to play more Fatal Frame. But if you would like to see more of me, of course, comment and say hello. And hope for Soen.